Have you ever wondered why some people seem to glide through life effortlessly, calm, focused, and full of energy, while for you, even a simple day feels overwhelming? Ethan Miller, 16, knew that feeling all too well. He stared at the alarm clock, groaning as the red numbers blinked mockingly at him. 7:42 a.m. He had already hit snooze twice and still had to scramble to get dressed, eat something, and finish a half-done homework assignment before the bus came. "Why is everyone else so together?" he muttered, shoving his sneakers on haphazardly. His mom's voice floated up from the kitchen. "Ethan, hurry up, you're going to miss the bus again." "I know, Mom," he yelled back, juggling his backpack and math notebook like a precarious stack of bricks. On the bus, he slumped into a seat and watched as his classmates laughed and joked, effortlessly managing their morning routines. They seemed calm, organized, and confident, qualities Ethan felt he could never grasp. Every day felt like a storm he was barely surviving. By the time he got home that afternoon, Ethan was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Homework sprawled across the kitchen table. His backpack was still half unpacked, and his mind was a jumble of stress and frustration. He didn't know where to start, and the more he tried, the more overwhelmed he became. "I just don't get it," he muttered, kicking his shoes off. "I try to stay on top of things, but nothing sticks. Maybe I'm just broken." It was then that he remembered his grandfather, George, a calm and patient man who had spent years traveling in Japan. George had a quiet wisdom about him, a kind of serenity that made everyone around him feel slightly lighter. As if calmness were contagious, Ethan decided to pay him a visit. Grandfather George's house smelled faintly of tea leaves and old books. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, a worn leather recliner that seemed to have absorbed decades of quiet contemplation. "Grandpa," Ethan slumped into a chair opposite him. "I feel like I'm drowning in my own life. I don't know how to get it together. I don't know." George regarded him for a moment, his eyes calm but piercing. Then he smiled. "Ethan, do you know why some people seem to move through life effortlessly?" Ethan shrugged. "I guess they're lucky?" George chuckled softly. "Not luck, not talent, not even intelligence. The truth is, life isn't changed by big, dramatic gestures. It's changed by small, consistent habits, tiny actions you might not even notice at first. That's how people quietly build calm, purpose, and control in their lives." Ethan frowned. "Tiny habits? Like making my bed or brushing my teeth?" "More than that," George said. He poured 2 mugs of green tea and handed one to Ethan. "I'm talking about habits that shape your mind, your body, and your character. Things that people in Japan have practiced for centuries. Not as trends or hacks, but as a way of living intentionally." Ethan took a sip, skeptical but intrigued. "Okay, so what are they?" George leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm going to teach you 5 habits. Not all at once, and not for show. Just small, consistent actions that, over time, will quietly transform your life. Do you want to try?" Ethan hesitated. He wanted to believe, but he was wary of promises that sounded too good to be true. "Yeah, I think I do." "Good," George said. "Then let's start with the first one." He explained a concept called step-by-step wins. Inspired by the Japanese practice of Kaizen. "Life can feel like climbing a mountain," George said. "You want to get healthier, smarter, more productive, but the steps seem impossibly large. The solution isn't to leap to the top, it's to take one small step each day. Just one push-up, 1 page of homework, 1 small act of focus. That's it." Ethan looked skeptical. "1 push-up, that's it?" "Exactly," George said. "It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. 1 tiny win each day builds confidence and momentum quietly, without resistance from your mind. And those tiny wins compound. Before you know it, you've climbed a mountain 1 small step at a time." The next morning, Ethan did as instructed. 1 push-up. At first, it felt almost laughable, but the next day he did 2. Within a week, he was doing 10 without thinking. The effect wasn't dramatic or immediate, but a tiny spark of confidence began to grow inside him. "Step-by-step wins," George said when Ethan called to share his progress. "Small actions compound. Big, dramatic changes often collapse, but small, Consistent habits quietly reshape who you are. That weekend, George introduced the second habit, your personal spark. Inspired by the Japanese concept of ikigai. Everyone has a spark, George said, something that makes life worth waking up for. It's not your job, your school, or what others expect. It's the little thing that excites your heart. Even just a little. Ethan thought about it. Drawing had once brought him joy. Cooking intrigued him. Helping others felt rewarding. He didn't need to change the world. He just needed to notice the small sparks and follow them. By the end of the first week, Ethan was already feeling different. His mornings were still chaotic. And he still made mistakes, but there was a glimmer of hope. Small steps, small sparks, quietly building the foundation for something bigger. The following week, Ethan returned to his grandfather George's house, feeling a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The first two habits had already stirred something inside him, tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in his confidence and outlook, but he knew there was more work to be done. "Welcome back, Ethan," George greeted him, his calm voice cutting through the chaotic thoughts that always seemed to follow Ethan like shadows. "Are you ready for the next lesson?" Ethan nodded, clutching his backpack like a lifeline. "I think so. I mean, I'm starting to feel better, I guess, but I still get overwhelmed." George smiled knowingly. "Good, that means you're paying attention." The next habit is called mindful eating. In Japanese, it's inspired by Hara Hachi Bu. The principle is simple. Eat until you're about 80% full. Not stuffed, but it's not just about food, it's about learning to listen to your body. To slow down, and to respect your own needs. Ethan raised an eyebrow. 80% full? That sounds weird. George chuckled. It does at first, but think about it. How often do you eat while distracted? Rushing through meals, or eating just because you feel stressed? Ethan's cheeks warmed with recognition. "Okay, probably a lot." "That's what most people do," George said, pouring a cup of green tea. "But your body knows when it's satisfied. Your mind just needs to slow down enough to notice." This habit is about mindfulness, not dieting. It teaches you to trust yourself. That evening, Ethan sat down for dinner with his mom. He tried George's advice, small bites, putting down his fork between each one, and focusing on the taste and texture of his food. At first, it felt awkward. His mind raced, jumping to homework, text messages, and worries about the next day. But gradually, he began to notice the subtle signs of fullness and satisfaction. He felt lighter, calmer, more present. "See?" George said over the phone the next day. "It's a tiny change, but it affects your energy, your focus, even your mood. You'll be amazed how something so simple can ripple through your life." The next habit was the hardest. And yet, the one Ethan found most transformative, quiet strength. "Life isn't always fair, Ethan," George said one afternoon, sitting on the porch with the late afternoon sun warming their skin. "You'll face challenges, disappointments, arguments, setbacks. Gammon, in Japanese philosophy, is about enduring hardship with patience, self-control, and calm. It's not about pretending everything's fine or hiding your feelings. It's about responding deliberately, rather than reacting impulsively." Ethan frowned. "So, I just don't get mad?" George shook his head gently. "You feel it, yes, but you don't let it control you. You acknowledge it, breathe, and choose a measured response. It's like training a muscle. Each time you practice, you get stronger, steadier, less shaken by chaos." It wasn't easy. The first test came the next day at school. During a group project, a classmate criticized Ethan's work harshly in front of everyone. Normally, he would have snapped back, red-faced and embarrassed, but he remembered George's words. He paused, took a deep breath, and responded calmly. "Thanks for the feedback. I'll take it into consideration." His classmates were surprised by his composure. More importantly, Ethan felt a sense of control he had never experienced before. That small act of restraint didn't just diffuse the tension, it gave him a new kind of confidence. Over the following days, Ethan began applying quiet strength in smaller moments, resisting the urge to check his phone obsessively. Staying calm when his schedule felt overwhelming, even handling minor arguments with siblings more patiently. Each success, no matter how small, strengthened his sense of stability. The final habit, gold in the cracks, was introduced on a rainy Saturday morning. Ethan watched as George held a cracked ceramic bowl, its fractures repaired with gleaming gold veins. "This is kintsugi," George said. "It's an art form, but it's also a philosophy. Life will break you sometimes, failures, heartbreaks, mistakes. You can hide those cracks, ignore them, or let them define you. Or, you can fill them with gold, learn from them, embrace them, and grow stronger because of them." Ethan thought about his own failures, missing a scholarship opportunity, losing a soccer game, arguments with friends, and moments when he felt utterly lost. He realized he had been treating these moments as weaknesses, as proof that he wasn't enough. But George's words reframed everything. "You're not broken beyond repair, Ethan," George continued. "You're becoming something stronger and more beautiful. Your cracks are where your light enters." Inspired, Ethan began looking at his own life differently. When he faced a mistake at school, instead of sulking or blaming himself, he reflected on what he could learn. When he struggled with confidence, he reminded himself that growth often comes from pain. Slowly, he felt a quiet resilience building inside him, like the gold filling the cracks of a broken bowl. By the end of the second week, Ethan had begun to integrate all 5 habits into his daily life. Step-by-step wins. Your personal spark, mindful eating, quiet strength, and gold in the cracks. The changes were subtle at first, less chaos in his mornings. Moments of focus during homework. Flashes of joy from hobbies, but the momentum was undeniable. Ethan started noticing small but meaningful differences. He smiled more, felt calmer when challenges arose, and even began looking forward to mornings instead of dreading them. He hadn't mastered everything, and he still had rough days. But there was a growing sense that life was no longer a storm he had to endure, he could navigate it. For the first time, Ethan felt a quiet hope. These small Japanese habits were slowly shaping him, not just his days, but his mind, his body, and his sense of purpose. He was beginning to realize that transformation didn't come from big, dramatic leaps, it came from patience, awareness, and consistency. As spring approached, Ethan felt a subtle but undeniable shift in his life. The mornings were still busy, and school challenges still arose, but something inside him had changed. He approached each day with a quiet awareness he had never known. A grounded confidence that made even the smallest victories feel significant. Walking to school one morning, Ethan noticed how calm his thoughts felt. He no longer rushed through the hallways, tripping over his own anxieties. Instead, he moved deliberately, observing his surroundings and taking in the small moments of life. A friend laughing with a sibling, the sunlight flickering across the pavement, the smell of freshly baked bread from the corner cafe. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full of meaning. And for the first time, Ethan noticed it. At school, the habits he had cultivated were starting to ripple outward. During group projects, he was patient, listening attentively to classmates and offering help instead of criticism. When he failed a quiz, he didn't spiral into self-doubt. Instead, he calmly reviewed what went wrong, applied small improvements, and moved forward. His friends began to notice a difference. "You seem different," one of his classmates said one afternoon as they walked to the bus stop. "You're calmer, more focused. Did something happen?" Ethan smiled, realizing how far he had come. "Just small changes, I guess. A few habits I've been practicing." He didn't go into detail, he didn't need to. The quiet transformation was already visible. At home, dinners became moments of mindfulness. He savored his food, listened to the subtle cues of fullness, and even began helping his mom with cooking. The meals weren't rushed, they were intentional, full of conversation and laughter. Ethan noticed his energy increasing, his focus improving, and his overall mood lifting. But the most profound change came in how he faced challenges. A few weeks later, Ethan was unexpectedly selected to lead the school's community service project, a responsibility that initially overwhelmed him. He felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, the old urge to panic and overthink. But then he remembered his grandfather's lessons: step-by-step wins, quiet strength, and gold in the cracks. He broke the project into small, manageable tasks, taking one deliberate step at a time. When difficulties arose, he responded with patience rather than frustration. And when mistakes happened, he treated them as opportunities to learn rather than failures to fear. The project progressed smoothly, The team worked together effectively. And Ethan felt a deep sense of accomplishment that wasn't tied to external approval. It came from knowing he had applied the principles consistently, with awareness and care. One evening, as he sat on the porch with George, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan reflected on the past few months. "Grandpa, I can't believe how much has changed," he said. "I'm not perfect. I still have tough days. But I feel different. I feel like I can handle life instead of it handling me." George nodded, his eyes soft with pride. "That's the beauty of these habits, Ethan. They don't demand perfection or instant transformation. They quietly reshape who you are, one small choice at a time. Life doesn't have to be a storm you survive. It can be a journey you navigate." Ethan smiled, thinking about all he had learned: to take small steps, to notice and nurture his personal spark, to eat mindfully and honor his body, to respond to difficulties with calm and resilience, and to embrace his mistakes as opportunities to grow stronger. Each habit had contributed to a life that felt richer, more intentional, and more meaningful. The boy who once rushed through his mornings in chaos, overwhelmed by anxiety and self-doubt, had become a young man who walked with confidence, faced challenges with patience, and approached life with quiet awareness. The transformation wasn't loud or dramatic, it was subtle, steady, and deeply fulfilling. And as Ethan continued to practice these habits, he realized the most important lesson of all: true change doesn't come from giant leaps, but from small, consistent choices made with awareness and care. Each tiny step compounded, each small act of mindfulness or patience strengthened him. And over time, the life he had once found overwhelming became a life full of possibility, purpose, and calm. So, if there's one thing to take away from Ethan's journey, it's this: start small, stay consistent, and trust the process. Even the tiniest habit can quietly reshape your life, if you give it time, attention, and care. Thank you for watching the entire story and sharing this journey with Ethan. If even a small part of it touched your heart, I encourage you to try one small habit today. See where it takes you. Leave a comment below and share your experience. I'd love to hear how tiny changes are transforming your life. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss future stories, insights, and practical tips that can help you grow every day. Remember, life isn't about sudden, dramatic leaps. It's about the quiet, consistent steps you take that, over time, transform everything. Start your journey today, and watch how even the smallest habit can change your world.